Okay, trying to evaluate cosine inverse and sine inverse of either zeros, ones, or negative ones. I always kind of take this exact same approach on each one of these. So the first thing I may do is just rewrite this in terms of cosine and sine without the inverse. So what we could do is set it equal to a dummy variable, and really the same in both these cases, and rewrite this. So instead of cosine inverse of -1 equals x, I would rewrite this as -1 equals the cosine of x. And maybe down below here, perhaps I shouldn't have used x again, but I can write this as -1 equals sine of x. And these can be two different x's. Okay, so as we're working through this problem, don't get thrown off that I found x was supposed to equal a certain angle. It's kind of two different problems going on at the same time. But our approach should be the same on both of these. So I'm kind of condensing it down. So don't get thrown off. These are different x's. Yeah. So whenever we were looking for cosine of x has to equal a -1, or sine of x has to equal a -1, what I like to do is I like to remind myself this has to be cosine of some angle, comma, sine of some angle, as we're looking at ordered pairs around the unit circle. So if I were to just kind of draw my unit circle in here, and we kind of identify these ordered pairs, that's the ordered pair that we went to the one to the right, and then 0 up or down. Up here at pi over 2 as an angle that is going 0 left or right, and then up 1. If we're thinking over here, that's pi units around. As far as an angle goes, that would be the ordered pair, 1 left, 0 up or down. And then down here, which normally we think of this as 3 pi over 2, so I'll label it as such for right now. We think of that as going 0 left or right and down 1. So that'd be the ordered pair down here. All right, so as we get going on this, let's remind ourselves that we're dealing with cosine inverse. This cosine inverse has to return a value between 0 and pi. Just how this is, how we've defined our inverse functions, that we have to return a value between 0 and pi, so that all students take calculus, we're either going to get a positive or a negative based on which quadrant we're in, or quadrantal angles, as it turns out. So in this case, we're trying to figure out cosine of what angle is going to produce a -1. So remember, cosine is our x value for these ordered pairs. So when we have an x value from these ordered pairs, that's going to be equal to -1. So in this case, we're looking over here at the left-hand side, we have -1 comma 0. That corresponds with an angle of pi. So that's going to be our solution for this first one. And our second one here, when we're looking at when does sine of x equal a -1, well, it's a little bit different question in this case. What you want to remember is that for sine inverse, as you're trying to evaluate these have to produce what gets returned here. We've cut down the domain between -pi over 2 and +pi over 2. So you have to be a little bit careful here, that as we're looking over at our ordered pairs, we're saying to ourselves, okay, I want sine of x to equal a -1. So I want my y value for this ordered pair to be a -1. So we're looking at this point at the bottom, 0 comma -1. That has a y value of -1. However, instead of our solution being 3 pi over 2, what we have to do is we have to say, well, I could go in the negative direction. So if I started at the x-axis and I rotated in the negative direction, this is equivalent to -pi over 2, a fourth of the way around our unit circle. All right, so instead of saying your solution is going to be 3 pi over 2, in this case, we have to say, well, our solution here, just based on how we've cut down sine inverse from -pi over 2 to +pi over 2, we're going to use x equals -pi over 2 in this situation for our solution. All right, I would do something very similar if I had either 0 on the inside of these or +1 on the inside of any of these. Basically the same thought process. I'd write out my ordered pairs along the way and remind myself cosine's my x value, sine's the y value. And I realize this can be a little bit confusing, that you have to rotate in the negative direction, and we've limited which values for angles we can utilize from -pi over 2 to +pi over 2. for both sine and tangent, whereas cosine is a little bit different, that it goes from 0 to pi. All right, hope this helps out. Good luck as you're working through these understanding inverse functions. Keep practicing. You got this.